Hello, everyone. Welcome to Spiritual Spotlight series. Today, I'm joined by Annette Marinaccio. Annette is a certified public accountant. She is an accomplished healthcare executive, and she is the author of Your Soul Focus. You believe in the afterlife, don't you? Annette, thank you so much for coming on Spiritual Spotlight series. I'm so happy you're here.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I'm very happy to be here, Rachel.
So, can you share with us the story of how your mother-in-law led you to discover the existence of the afterlife?
Sure. And I'll also say that although she's the one who started me on the path, after I understood that there was an afterlife, I spent like 4 years entrenched in everything metaphysical because I'm an accountant, a CPA. I'm like, I need to understand this, what's going on.
Yeah.
So, and CPAs are not the traditional, I think, spiritual types,
No,
but
ma'am.
you know, so when my mother-in-law died in 2006, and after she died, so she was on the other side, that's when she decided to prove to me that she was still here. So she didn't teach me about the afterlife when she was here on earth with me. It
Right.
wasn't until she was crossed over, which makes it really fascinating to me. But so she's on the other side, and then she did for me, she left me what I call a series of breadcrumbs. And
Mm,
I followed those breadcrumbs one at a time. And I understand now a little bit more about the way the universe works. And being an accountant, I think the other side knew that I needed to digest every little breadcrumb before I got to the next one. I couldn't be overwhelmed. I needed to take that one step at a time. So the steps that occurred right off the bat is she had died in October of 2006, and the following week, I was with my 13-year-old daughter, and we were having breakfast before she goes to school and I go to work. And she, very matter of fact, said, "Guess what? I got a gift from Grandma Lucille yesterday." Grandma Lucille was my mother-in-law who had just died. And I'm thinking, okay, that's not possible, but I have to listen to her and understand what she's
yeah.
saying. So I was like, what do you mean? And she explained to me that in her art class the day before, they had made 3D cards, and she decided to make cards with red and green pom poms. So she went over to the pom pom or art supply closet and took out a Tupperware with all different color and size pom poms, and she pulled out and counted 11 green and 11 red, and she double, triple counted. And she's very, very meticulous to this day, so that doesn't surprise me. And she went and she put the Tupperware back in the closet. And she said, and when I came back, there were my 11 green and my 11 red, and one lavender and one ivory, the same color as the balloons that we let go at Grandma's gravesite. So I know Grandma is saying she got the balloons. Thank you for the balloons. So I was just shocked, and I assumed, I don't know if I would say I was skeptical. I would say that I hadn't really thought about the afterlife prior to that.
Right.
And so I think I assumed that she was going through some kind of really deep grief that I didn't understand,
Mm,
and that this was somehow a coping mechanism for her. And so I said, well, how did they get there? And then she was really fascinated. She was just like, that's it. I don't understand if they just appeared or they flew through the air. And I said, well, was anybody else around your desk? She said, no. And I said, could you have taken them out by mistake? She said, no. And I could see she had played through all the possibilities
right.
already in her head. And the only possibilities for her were they had just appeared or they floated through the air. So then she said to me, do you want to see them? And I said, okay. And she ran up to her bedroom and came down with them. And they were the exact colors of the balloons. They weren't even like purple and white. They were lavender and like the
Right.
exact colors. And I was like, I didn't know what to say. So I said a very stupid thing for a mother to say, I think, but I was sort of in shock. And I said, well, all I can say is this. If these are really from Grandma Lucille, then when you die, you should be buried with these because that would be an absolute miracle. I know, stupid thing to say, but that's what I said. So, and she was like, I know, it's so exciting. And she went and she tucked them away. And what happened after that is I started telling so many people the pom
Yeah.
pom story, all my professional colleagues, friends. because I was trying to make sense of it.
Mm.
And also, I was assuming something was going on with my daughter, who was very close to her grandmother, my mother-in-law. And so I figured maybe if I could help in some way. But as I was telling various people the story, my neighbor up the block, good friend of mine, who I'm still very friendly with, she said to me, she listened to my whole story. And then she just in very matter-of-fact way said, "You believe in the afterlife, don't you?" Which is the subtitle of my book.
Right.
And that's what really started me, because now I had a very credible, close friend who was very matter of fact about it. And I was like, "You believe in the afterlife?" And she's like, "Oh my God, of course." And then she proceeded to tell me how she frequents a medium, Josephine G, on Long Island,
Mm.
whenever she is stuck in a real life problem. Like, should I sell the house? Should we move mom? She taps into her deceased father, you know, and,
Yes.
which now I understand you can do, but at that point, my jaw was on the floor, like, what, you know? And so at any rate, I now was digesting that. And then later that week, my husband, my recently widowed father-in-law, and my son went into town for dinner. And we were seated in a restaurant, and we were seated by the window. And facing the outside, but we could see through it, was this big thing that said "Dinner and Medium Show with Josephine G." The exact name that my girlfriend had told me about. So that's the breadcrumbs.
Right. Yes.
And she wasn't going to be there for another 3 or 4 months. It was April, the last Sunday in April, she was going to be there, of 2007. So I called my girlfriend when I got home. I'm like, "Do you want to go?" And she said yes. So myself and two girlfriends went, and I made the reservations. Not that I was thinking anything at the time,
Of course.
but I know the reservations I made. I said net party of three, and that was it. And we got there, and we were seated in that, I don't know, maybe 100 people in a restaurant, and we all have our meal like you would see on TV almost. So you
Of
all have
course.
your meal, and this medium comes out, Josephine G. She looks very, sweet and everything. And she starts reading, one table right off the bat with a fallen police officer, and they're crying and whatnot. And I'm thinking, oh, they're probably planted. That's, whatever. She obviously knows them. But then she comes over to our table and she says, "Okay, I have this woman here. Her name is Lucille. That's my mother-in-law's name." And I'm like, "I'm not taking this microphone." I'm mortified. I'm in my head thinking, what information did they don't have my credit card? They don't even have my last name. I said a net party of three. Maybe my girlfriend Maria told them about, like, what is
Yeah.
going on here?
Right.
And
Right.
my mother-in-law was really trying to come through. So Josephine says, maybe Lou, something with an L. She's got black hair. She's holding her stomach. My mother-in-law died of pancreatic cancer. And I didn't take the thing. And my girlfriend's kicking me under the table. Like, "That's your mother-in-law." I'm like, "What are you talking about?" So I didn't take the bait.
Right.
And she
Right.
retreated out, and she ended up, the woman at the table next to us raised her hand and said, "My name's Elizabeth." And she said, has an L in it. And she said, "Elizabeth, did you just book a trip to Italy?" Which I had just booked a trip to Italy for my family. So Elizabeth's like, "Well, I just came back from Florida." And so then Josephine like retreats out, reads somebody else. And this is where I really have to credit my mother-in-law, because she was determined. And
Love
so
that.
she came back. And Josephine G said, "This woman is back." And she's saying her name is Lucille, and she's holding her stomach like she died of something like stomach cancer. My mother-in-law had died of pancreatic.
Right.
So now I raised my hand, took the microphone, and then many people, not all people, because many people have the gift from early on, so they don't know exactly when it
Right.
changes for them. But for me, this was the one line that just shot me into, oh my God, I have to figure this out. My mother and mother-in-law had both been diagnosed with cancer within days of each other in 2005. My
Wow.
mother-in-law pancreatic, and she spent the year fighting for her life and succumbed to the illness. My mother, breast cancer, and she spent the year fighting for her life. She did not end up dying at that point. She died in 2022 at 90 years old. And then she
Wow.
was 75. So my mother's name was Rita, and although I changed the names in the book, and my mother-in-law was Lucille.
Mm.
And so Josephine then said, "Oh, okay, yes, this is definitely for you. She's asking me, how is Rita? Rita's still here, isn't she?" And that was it, because not only had she pegged both of their names,
Yeah.
but when they were both fighting for their lives, going through chemo, radiation, surgeries, every time we'd visit one or the other, they would ask how the other one was. How's Lucille? How's Rita? Because they were going through
Love
such similar
that.
things. So I know my mother-in-law knew that if she said that line, that would get
It
me.
would click in.
Just clicked. It was like a switch. And then I went home and then I had a very evidential reading after that.
Yes.
I went home after that, woke my husband up. He was like, are you awake?" And he was like, "What?" I was like, You're never gonna believe this. I think your mother's still around us. Like, I don't know what's going on." So it was very fascinating to me. But the long and short of it is, so those are the breadcrumbs that started
Yeah.
it. But the next 4 years, I was entrenched in all things metaphysical. I took classes, I read books, I spoke with hundreds of people. Um, and I had dream downloads. I tapped into my spirit guides, which I didn't even want to comprehend what spirit guides were before all of this. I was like,
Yeah.
what? But that whole, I got dream downloads from them.
Yeah.
It was a really cathartic experience for me to learn everything I could about, I don't even want to say everything I could about the afterlife, because I had just one main question. Because once you get involved in metaphysical and the afterlife, there are so many avenues. It's
Yes.
not, there's just so many things. Like, I know you have an affinity to the Akashic records.
Yeah.
So, it's like that's a whole path in and of itself.
Yes.
I mean, spirit guides, whole path,
Yes.
meeting, everything. But I had one question, and that was, if we go on, what the heck are we doing here? That was my question. What
It's a great
is going
question.
on? And I needed to understand why we were here.
Yeah.
If we go on, then what is this about? It seems so important to us. What is it about? And that was my question. So after about 4 years of just soaking everything I could in, I felt like, something, I have a good handle on it now, and I
Yeah.
sort of know the way the universe works, very, very different than I
Yes.
initially thought. And that's it. So that's what
Yeah.
started my path, and that was 2006. She died, and that
Yeah.
was 2007.
I have to say that as you're speaking about your mother-in-law and then your mom, the energy that's coming in for them is so intense. And
Yeah.
I love that you didn't just put it away on a shelf, like, what your daughter was saying, like, okay, we'll read. I love that you still remained open and had a spirit of curiosity and still was like, okay, maybe there's more to this than what meets the eye. I respect you so much for that, because I feel like sometimes we're like, "Meh," you know what I mean? But you're,
Yeah, thank you. Thank
yeah,
you. I felt like a responsibility, because if she were grappling with something that I didn't
yeah,
understand, I felt like it was like my responsibility to figure it out and understand it. But
right.
it was the tip of an iceberg. It was like
Isn't it?
it was like one thing after another. It was like, oh my God, oh my God. It was like everything was so eye-opening.
And it is fascinating when our loved ones are in spirit. They are very similar to their personalities, how they are. That's how they present to you. So I would want to know, was your mother-in-law, does she have a very like outgoing personality that she was like, I'm gonna get you. Like
So
I'm coming through.
it's interesting. One of my girlfriends, after I put the book out, which was probably, I put
Yeah.
the book out 3 years ago, so it was 4 years after that even. But after I put the book out, my girlfriend said to me, "Your mother-in-law must have been so strong, like such a strong, like you're saying, strong
Yeah.
individual." And I said, she was strong, but I wouldn't say she's that much more strong than anybody else I knew.
Right.
Um, she was really a grounded, very grounded, solid
I love that.
individual. And then she said, "Well, you two must have been so close." And we were close,
Yeah.
but again, not, not any more close than a lot of other people.
Right.
And my girlfriend said, "Well, why did she pick you to come through to?"
Good
And I was like,
question.
"I don't know." And then I learned afterwards, and then my girlfriend came to me right afterwards, and she said, "I figured it out, because she knew you'd write a book." and I was like, I figured out afterwards
Right.
that a lot of times the other side will come through with
Yes.
a purpose,
Yes.
and they're going to come through at a point where the person that they come through to
Mm,
is able to share.
correct.
So I think that's why she came through to me. I think she was very determined because
Yes.
I probably have a soul contract, and I was meant to help one. I mean, I'm an accountant. I'm not like a nurse or a doctor where you get like, oh my God, you saved my life. It's nothing like that. So for me to
Right.
put something out, in a book when I don't have that spiritual inclination,
Right.
it helped it's helped many people at this
Of
point,
course.
but whether it was 1 or it was 100 or it was 1,000,
Right.
it's helped people in a
Right.
way that, otherwise, it helped them on their journey, and that's really why I think my mother-in-law she's very determined.
I love that.
I'd say that more than anything else, a very determined individual, strong, determined.
I love that. And I would probably take it even one step further that she's probably part of your soul team now, like guiding you along your
Yeah,
path. So I would take that one step further. So your
I agree.
book, your soul focus explores, intricate aspects of our souls and our journeys like we've been discussing. Can you maybe elaborate on some of these complexities that are shared in your book?
Well, it's interesting because when during that 4 years as I was learning about the other side, the other side, because my mother-in-law enlisted not only my spirit guides, but my other deceased relatives, and they really, walked me very slowly
I like
through
that.
things, just one thing at a time, just really knowing that if they overwhelm me, I might just shut down completely,
Yeah.
not really understanding it. So they made sure I understood and digested. And a couple of things, that the overarching theme
Hmm.
that I learned very early on was that here on Earth, we're living one tiny, teeny sliver of our soul,
Oh, good point. That's
but
true.
we're intentionally by design born with almost like a dunce cap on,
Yeah.
blinders, so we are not distracted. The purpose of the blinders is so we're not
Hmm.
distracted from doing our soul's purpose over here.
Right.
You have to do if you had the perspective that you'd have on the other side here, you wouldn't focus enough to get
Right.
what you need to get done. So you have these blinders on, so you end up thinking and feeling that this is it, this
Mm,
is ever important. And the word ego has a negative connotation, but it's really, it's a matter of Einstein's. You can relate to what you can only relate to what you can relate to.
true.
And when you're here, you can relate to yourself and
True.
your community and your small world. Um, so when you understand that your soul is just your human experience here is a
Yeah.
sliver of your whole existence,
Right.
whole perspective spins on its head. It's like, oh
Yeah.
my goodness. It's not that it's not important here, but it's not nearly as important as we all think it is. And feel that it is. We all feel that it
Yeah.
is. It's a human experience that we have this sort of depth of dependency and depth of relationships and
Mhm.
depth of love. It's not, it's part of the human experience, but it's not really part of your soul.
Right.
It's a part of your soul's experience. So, or it's a sliver of your soul's experience. So that when I learned that, that was pretty, like eye-opening to me. And I also learned that the other side is literally right there, and that they'd
Yes.
help you if they can, like no, like really at the end. So I have this analogy in my book where I say, let's say it's a snowy morning and you walk outside on your porch and you see just snow glistening as far as the eye can see, and it's glistening in the trees, and it just looks absolutely like this beautiful, beautiful winter morning. And then if you picture just at the end of where your eyesight ends, an acrylic dome, like a snow globe,
Yeah.
and your loved ones on the outside, just of that snow globe, they see everything we have going on.
So true.
They're right outside of our eyesight, I mean, our energy level, but our eyesight, so we don't see them, but they're able to see absolutely everything.
Yeah.
And so when I started learning that, that you don't have to worry about them like quote unquote resting in peace. They want to help if they can.
They
You know,
do.
you're never alone. So that was an eye-opening thing too. And I think of things that I went through in my life that were horribly, horrible, difficult times and times where I felt so alone. And
Mm,
then to understand that you're never really alone,
true.
that your loved ones and your spirit guides and angelic angels are really always trying
Yeah.
to help. You've got a team of people. It's not just you.
Right.
So that was eye-opening. But one of the most intricate things I learned about, I also learned you can tap into the other side whenever you want. Like if you
Yes.
need proof,
Yes.
ask for something specific. Ask for
True.
something specific, and if they can show you, they will. So it's really quite simple. I'll give you a story, but and I'll tell you about the very intricate thing. But you know, one of the stories is in my book is just ask for something specific. And I had this woman in the middle of the country read the book, and she reached out to me and she said, "I just have to share this story with you." And I was like, "Oh my God, it was a great story." That her brother had died when she was young, she and he were younger, and she
Mm,
had a young child now, 8 or 10 year old daughter, and that daughter had never met her Uncle Jack,
right.
the woman who wrote to me's brother. And so when she, after reading my book, she said, "Let's ask Uncle Jack for something specific. We're going to meditate on something specific. We're going to ask
Yeah.
for it." And so the little girl said, "I want to ask for Finn the cat." And so the mother said, "Who's Finn the cat?" And she said, "Last summer when grandma was over here babysitting me one day, we saw this cat came over and let us pick it up, and it had a little tag on it with Finn." And so the mother said, "Okay, that might be too specific, but let's meditate on a cat. What color
Yeah.
was?" So the little girl said it was orange, you know. So she said, "Okay, let's ask for an orange cat. So let's ask Uncle Jack to show us an orange cat." Now I'm thinking to myself, Uncle Jack on the other side, been waiting for 30 years for his sister to know he could tap into him, right?
Right.
So,
Right.
you know, so they meditate on this orange cat. A couple of days later, the mother is putting the garbage out and she hears meow behind the garbage can. She runs in, gets her 10-year-old daughter. They run out and the cat crawls out and they pick up the cat. And sure
Yeah.
enough, the tag is Finn. It's the same cat
I
that she
love
saw
that.
the year before with the grandmother. And so I'm thinking, I think of it from this Uncle Jack side. Like finally, I get to show them I'm really
Yes.
here,
Yes.
you know. So she was so thankful to me, and the woman, and she's like, "I just can't believe that he's been so accessible."
This whole entire time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I found that out, and I thought that was amazing also. And I
I
have another really intricate story, but
I
I'll
really like the analogy of the snow globe, and I always liken to our, like you said, we're never alone. And I always say death is just a doorway. So, and we just have to like just know that death is just a doorway, and it kind of takes away some of the sadness and the grief because even though they're not in a physical body, you know, you still can tap with them on a soul level, which
yes.
you definitely are teaching people that. So, in your experience, how can the knowledge of the afterlife help people during times of grief or curiosity help them out?
Well, I think one of the biggest things is once you become comfortable knowing that you can tap into the other side if needed,
Yeah,
that's very helpful.
so
Because
true.
if you're really going through something and you really trust that they're there or that they can help you,
Hmm.
you know, that's very powerful.
Yeah,
Um, but in terms of really helping someone through grief, I always feel like there's kind of two levels of grief. One grief is when you think your loved one is gone and
mm,
that's it. You
so
know,
true.
you'll never see them again. You'll never feel their energy again. They're gone. Who knows if they're okay? And that's very, very difficult to
That
climb
is
out. But if you trust that they're still there, and again, if you just look for a sign or ask
right.
for something
Ask.
specific,
Hmm.
and then at least you feel like that level of grief is easier to come out, not come out from, but to learn to live with,
So
because you never come
true.
out of it.
True.
When you lose someone you love, your life is different, and you wouldn't want it to. You'd want it to go back maybe to the way it was, but you wouldn't
Right. Of
want to have the grief go away
course.
because you want it to lessen a little bit, but you understand that you have to learn to live with it,
Right.
and it's part of who you are now, it's shaped who you are.
So true.
So, but once you know that they're there and they're safe,
Mm,
that should give you some solace to go on.
yeah.
It's still grief because you don't have them in the way you used to have them. You want to converse with them, you want to hug
Yeah.
them, and you can't do that. You can speak a mile a minute to them and they'll hear you, but you don't get the response back.
Yeah.
So it's still grief, but it's a different level of grief once you know that it's, like you said, stepping through a doorway.
Yeah.
I heard some people when I was in that 4 years of trying to figure things out, that they said it's like being pulled out of a crappy, dirty apartment into the Ritz-Carlton.
I love that. I love
That's
that.
that's what it's like
And,
So,
and I think to your point, like if you're asking for signs from your loved ones and you want to connect with them, and maybe you're not receiving what they're sending to you, ask for a clearer sign. Like ask for a sign that you're going to understand and like Finn the cat. Your loved
yes.
ones, your angels, your guides, your team, they're going to make sure that you get the message. Like, but you just got to ask.
That's right, and I said be very specific in the book, and I had another friend, another woman who read the
Yeah,
book, a friend of a friend, and she said she asked her mother for a blue cameo, which was pretty specific,
I
and
love
she's
that.
thumbing through a magazine, and she finds an ad with 4 different cameos, and one's a blue cameo, like, a week later.
Yes.
Oh my goodness. But I also say this is the out because, a very common question is people
Mm,
say, "But I'm not getting signs. I don't, I asked you something specific. I didn't receive
right.
it." The out, I'll say, is this: they will do it if they can,
Mm,
but they absolutely will not interfere with a soul's path.
true.
Any soul, your soul, somebody else's
Yeah,
soul, they won't interfere with your growth or your path.
that's a good point.
So if you are, I'm making this up, but if you're really desperate because you miss them so dreadfully and you can't sort of see, in front of you, and you're hanging your life on wanting this one particular sign,
Hmm.
but your soul needs to get to another place of solace without that sign,
Mm,
you're not going to get it.
that's a good point. That's a really good point.
So, and it may not even just be your soul path. People come to Earth for all different kinds of people and purposes.
So true.
So it's not always about you either. But if you can't, if they feel it's going to interfere with your growth or the growth of another soul, they're
Hmm.
not going to give it to you. And then, of course, there's also sometimes it takes them a while to figure out how to get assigned to you. It's not like so easy, like they don't go over there like all of a sudden they're magicians and they can do a lot of things. They can do a lot more, but it takes them a while to get into the frequency
It's true.
that can dialogue or with us.
That's very
So
true.
so there are reasons that you may not get what you want, but
Yeah,
if you're persistent and if they can, and if it doesn't interfere with your soul's growth or somebody else, they will give you what you're asking.
absolutely. That's a really, really good piece of advice. So before I ask you the last question, if anyone's interested in learning more about you, purchasing your book, what is the best place for them to go to?
I have a website, AnnetteMarinaccio.com, and I set it up initially when I put the book out because I knew that I was going to. I know that the book has its own energy, but I knew that if anybody asked me to talk about the book, I would be like, absolutely. So I have wonderful people who've interviewed me on podcasts, or this podcast will be on there, and I tell people, in the middle of the night, if you just want to hear some great afterlife discussions,
Yeah.
don't only go to the podcast that I've done, but go to the host's podcast because
Yeah,
they've interviewed other people.
definitely.
So, and there's a
Definitely.
wealth of information out there. So I have a really great, robust website, and I also my book is on Amazon and Barnes and Noble.
Love that.
And so, yeah, those are the play. And I have it in audio and I have it electronic because my objective was just to get the book out there to help.
Yeah.
It's not like I love my job and I have a great job, so it's not about the book, you know.
Gotcha.
It's just I knew that the
Yeah.
book would help people, and
Right.
that's my purpose in it, you
I
know.
love that. I love
So
that. Finally, could you maybe share a piece of advice for our listeners who are seeking to connect with their soul's purpose or navigate spiritual questions they might have for themselves?
yeah, sure. I what I like to say is if you're moving forward in kindness, then you're moving forward in the right direction in terms of your soul's purpose. But I'll also say this that I've learned, which is a little bit uncomfortable sometimes for people to hear. But if you find things that aggravate you and other people, like boy, that person does this and it's so irritating to me, especially your family members. When you find the
Never
or,
irritated.
or when you're irritated or you are repeating patterns, if you can look for patterns in yourself that you're repeating over and over, that's usually a good clue that you may have come here to Earth to try and conquer something. Something could be something very small, a compulsion that's very small, but that's a good sign of really why you may have come here. And of course, you can do all sorts of other things, like look at the Akashic records, go have your chart read. There are
Mhm.
lots of ways to determine what your divine purpose was,
Yeah.
purpose is here. But that's a good way to tell. But I will also say, I like to tell people this because I think it's just an overall great piece of advice to help your soul and to help you on earth. And that's try to lose the feeling that comes with the word compare. Because we have a tendency as humans, from a very young age, we grow up observing everything around us and everyone around us, and then we grow up very comparing ourselves, and not
Yeah.
only to other people. Like somebody might say, "Oh, I don't have to worry about that because I'm not an envious person. I don't really envy other people." But you probably still compare yourself to yourself. I used to be, different when I was younger. I used to have more energy.
Mhm.
I wish I was this at this point in my life. Compare yourself to what you had hoped you would have been now. Forget comparing yourself. Don't compare yourself to others. Don't compare yourself to yourself when you were younger. Don't compare yourself to where you want to be. Just really try to appreciate where you are right now. People know that, I have to meet someone where they are. Meet
Yeah.
yourself where you are now also. So if people can just shed away the feeling that comes with the word compare, it really helps open your soul
Yes.
up.
That that was such amazing advice. Both of those pieces of advice, both very amazing.
Thank
Thank
you.
you so much. Thank you,
Thank
Annette,
you.
for coming on the Spiritual Spotlight series. It's really been amazing to speak with you today. Thank you again.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me. Very excited to be here.